Hello, Future Frontier Academy scientists. Mr. De La Cerda here, welcoming you to this summer's first science experiment titled, How Strong is Your Noodle? Before we kick things off today, make sure you have a scientist's best friend, pencil and paper, as well as the materials we'll be needing for today. Now that you got a paper, pencil, and your materials, we're ready to go and get things started. So, how strong is your noodle? As you can see, the spaghetti noodle is not very strong. What we just made is an observation. So how weak or strong is a noodle? That's our question for today. How weak or strong is a noodle? We'll be measuring the strength of a noodle based on how many beans we can throw in this cup before the noodle
snaps.
In the scientific method, a scientist uses a hypothesis, an educated guess, to guess what the answer to their experiment is going to be. How many beans do you think it's going to take for a noodle to snap? Make sure to pause the video in the next slide, copy the sentence, and fill in the blank with your guess as to how many beans it's going to take for that noodle to break. All right, kiddos, last step before we can break any noodles. I mentioned earlier how a scientist's best friend is his paper and his pencil. Scientists' job is to go ahead and solve the mysteries of the universe, and they can't do that unless they write it down to show us. So make sure you go ahead and pause the video in the next slide and copy down that chart so you can prove your results. The first thing you're going to do is go ahead and get yourself a piece of string and nicely fasten and tape the ends to opposite sides of the cup. This cup is where we're going to go ahead and put the beans in. After you got your cup and string ready, you can then hang your cup and string on your noodle. I will mention that you should really fasten your noodle to the chair. Otherwise, when it bends, it'll slip and fall off. So make sure you use long pieces of tape to really get it down so it will not slip. Now that everything is set up, now it's time to start counting how many beans this noodle can hold before it snaps. Make sure to keep count. 1, 2, 3. How many beans did you count in your cup before your noodle snapped in two? Go ahead and write the number that you counted right here underneath trial number 1. Now you might be wondering, why is there a trial number 2 and trial number 3? Scientists need to be very sure of their work. So in order to make sure that trial number 1 was correct or close to the number it needed to break the noodle, we need to make sure and repeat our experiments 2 more times. So,
let's go ahead and head back and prepare our experiment for trial number 2. And then, when we finish counting how many it takes to snap that noodle, we'll go ahead and do it 1 more time, just to be sure that our number of beans to break a noodle is correct. Come on, let's go ahead on back so we can set up the experiment for a second time. Time for trial number 2. Let's go and get started. Time to go and record trial number 2's data. Go ahead and make sure that you write your number down right here. And don't be afraid if your number is not the exact same number as from trial 2. That's science. You write down and tell the truth. What did you get?
yay, time for the final trial. Yay, we finished that last and final trial. So go ahead and write down that last and final number right here. How many beans did it take to break that last and final noodle? And after you write it down, let's go ahead and look at all 3 of your numbers. Are all of your numbers very, very close to each other? More than likely they are, just like mine. I had 91 in the first, 87 in the second, and 92 in the last one. Now, we can make a conclusion. A conclusion uses the results from your experiment to find out the answer to our question. So the answer to our question, how strong is our noodles? Well, based on my results, my noodles can hold around 87 to 92 beans in a cup before snapping. For help creating your own conclusion, go ahead and pause on the next slide to write down and create your own conclusion. How many beans did you put in your cup before your noodles broke? I'm very curious to go ahead and look at your charts. And even better, why don't you go ahead and send me a picture of you completing this experiment? Now, this is a very simple experiment for our first go. In the coming weeks, we have some very, very exciting ones that include catapults, paper airplanes, among other things. So make sure that you take this one as a good practice run. And I really hope to go ahead and see those pictures and charts. And even better, expect to see you in the coming weeks. Make sure to go ahead and check out Wednesday and Friday, Social Studies and Fine Arts. They got some real awesome stuff planned for y'all. See you next week.